Welcome to the Resonance Lab, a podcast for leaders who are done chasing impressions and focused on making their message land through resonant communications. This show dives into how today's most effective brands break through the noise by putting their audience, not themselves, at the center of every message, which is also a great lesson for leaders. And I'm very excited for my guest today because she is all about disruptive leadership. Welcome, Charlene Li. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm Christine Perkett. I'm CEO and founder of the Nova Method and co-host of this podcast. Most of us have been told in one way or another that we should have AI figured out by now and that everyone else is moving faster, doing better, experimenting smarter, and seeing a future that, if we're honest, still looks a little bit blurry to us, if not completely blind. So what I've come to learn and what Charlene is saying and has been saying for a while now is that AI anxiety or anxiety over technology disruption in general is never really about the technology. It's about trust. It's about how you make decisions. It's about how you keep your people with you along the journey and how you lead when the ground keeps moving under all of our feet. So Charlene argues that AI is not a technology problem and you hand it off to your IT team. It's a leadership and strategy challenge. And I have to say that Charlene, I love your highlight reel on your website because it really goes back to before AI. And I want to jump into that. But first, I'm going to give your official bio, so everyone knows your background. Since I've known you since you were an analyst way back with Forrester, but Charlene is also a New York Times bestselling author, keynote speaker, and one of the most respected voices on disruptive leadership and digital transformation. For more than 2 decades, she has helped shape leaders and make sense of every major technology shift from the early rise of social media to today's arrival of AI. She was a founder of the Altimeter Group and is the author of influential books, including Groundswell from many years ago, which most of us in my generation count as required reading, and The Disruption Mindset, and her newest book, Winning with AI, The 90-Day Blueprint for Success, co-authored with Dr. Katya Walsh, gives leaders a practical roadmap for driving real value with AI in 90 days. Is that right? In 90 days?
That's right. 90 days.
90 days. Well, I'm excited to learn about that because all I hear every day is AI disruption, AI fears, AI visibility is a big one for us at the Nova Method. So I know you've also just founded Quantum Networks Group and you are training executives to lead AI transformation. And one of the biggest accolades for me as a fangirl is that Daniel Pink called you one of the finest business minds. So that is pretty amazing. So to say that I'm delighted to have you here is an understatement. So let's dive in. Groundswell was actually one of the first business books I read in my early social media days. And now we've got Winning with AI. And what struck me in our prep conversation is that you said the exact same thing back then about social media that you do about AI today, which is that it's never about the technology, as we've mentioned. So can you dive into that as a start?
Yeah, I like to say that it's never about the technology. It's always about the people. And that's where we get disruption and technology wrong. We run towards the bright, shiny object and all sense of sensibility goes out the window. And so what I find to be true over the past 30 years that I've been doing this is that it's always leadership and culture that's wearing a technology costume. That it's the same digital, same as social, same as mobile. We're running this into the same issue. So I like to say history doesn't repeat itself, but it does definitely rhyme. And the difference this time is that speed is the new mode, that everything's happening at such a speed, and your ability to understand even and then be able to make decisions and act is really hampered by the need for speed. And so you're always feeling behind. The other twist is that this impacts the entire organization. Anybody working with knowledge, which is everyone, and especially the corner office.
Right.
So this is much more personal in many ways than the earlier waves. Social media was confined primarily to a couple places within the organization. Digitalization, again, very, very specific. You could see it coming, and it didn't really require us to rethink things. AI is making us reconsider everything up and down and throughout the entire organization. And that's just a lot of change coming at you at full speed, and you're going, oh my goodness, what the heck do I do? So I think it's a real disruption in many ways, and a very, very big one. And we're all feeling this, every single person is feeling this right now in their lives.
Well, I think it's interesting because obviously you and I work more in the tech realm. So I'll be interested as we go along in this conversation, if you've had conversations that are with leaders that are not in that realm. So say, for example, a retail and e-commerce leader. Now they have a tech aspect because they have e-commerce, but they're not in it as much as we are every day. And I'm wondering if they're feeling that same kind of anxiety or if you think it's going to catch up to them. And if that's part of the work that you're doing now is to help them prepare in a way that maybe those of us in tech didn't have the opportunity to do.
Right. Again, I think you have an advantage in tech in that you've been through this cycle before. So it feels very familiar. You've built up this disruption muscle, right? We live disruption day in, day out in technology. These other companies, they had the luxury of waiting until this year, and now the pressure is so much on them. They're experiencing FOMO, fear of missing out, and at the same time, they have FOGI, which is fear of getting in.
I have not
they're
heard
sitting.
That. I like
so
that.
they're sitting. Made it up. The idea is that they're sitting on the sidelines, they're sitting on shore, looking at the water. It looks really murky, and like I don't want to go in there, but I know I have to.
Right.
But I really don't want to. But
that's
I have
fascinating. And do you have a different set of advice for them than you do the leaders who have FOMO? Or what are the similarities? What are the differences?
It's very similar. And the fear of missing out is the whole core of both of these is I'm not going fast enough. I'm not jumping in. I don't know where to start. How do I do this and stay safe? How do I do this without losing a ton of money or making mistakes? Because nothing's written down on there's no playbook on how to do this.
Right.
And especially if you're in a regulated industry, it feels especially scary because there are no regulations. You know it's going to get regulated someday, but you have no idea when. So, and I know I have to do something now. So how do I approach this? How do I even think about it? And if you're a leader, you're oftentimes looking at this as a technology problem. So you're shunting it over to your CIO and IT, like, go figure this out. And IT goes, well, what do you want me to do with this? I can give everybody AI and then what? So I think there's a tremendous leadership gap happening right now.
Right.
And our leaders are not showing up. And that's the reason why we wrote the book, is to tell leaders this is what you need to do first, second, third, and fourth in order to use AI to create value.
And are you having to go to leaders and say, here's why you need to be thinking about this. Here's why we wrote the book. Or are they finding your book and coming to you? And were they disinterested before they found out? What has been sort of the cadence that you've seen since the book was published?
Well, everybody, I've been talking about the book for a good year before we published it. So again, that hunger for solutions, for answers, a direction of travel is definitely there. So people oftentimes find me. And then also my message finds them because they're reading, they're seeing it, podcasts like this gets the message out and like, oh, this is a different way to be thinking about this. And again, what you said earlier before, this is not a technology issue. It's a leadership and culture issue. And when you look at it that way, you're like, oh, now I begin to understand what I need to do as a leader, how I need to show up. What is it that I need to do? And very importantly, what are the questions I have to be asking in order to guide people, especially if I don't have the answers?
Right. Well, that's the tricky part because it seems like there are a lot of us that don't have the answers and we're figuring it out almost like classmates at the same time. So we need leaders like you to guide us on how to study and what to study and which parts of the textbook are relevant and which are not. But you talked about changing earlier and you advised starting with what is not changing. Can you talk about what that looks like in practice? Because I know when we talked a little bit to prepare for this episode, you talked about sticking with what you know or starting with what you know. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. And I think what happens is that the leaders go, I don't understand AI. And the number one question they ask me is, how do I get up to speed on AI? And I'm like, join the club. We're all trying to figure out like what's going on with this and it's constantly changing. And what I say is don't focus on the technology, focus on what you know. You know your customers, you know your market space, you know your strategy, you know your employees, you know your stakeholders and investors. Start with what you know. And in particular, you know what opportunities and problems exist in the marketplace. And as a successful leader, you have been laser focused on addressing a small number of those. So your ability to focus on the most important strategic questions are the key to your success with AI. And it's saying, these are my biggest opportunities and challenges. How will I use AI to support and address and be in service of those objectives. So you don't start with AI, you start
Right.
with what you know, your business strategy. And I keep going back to leaders. No one knows that strategy better than you do. No one knows what your customers are hitting. And you can use AI to help you identify and deepen your understanding of that problem and then go and solve it. So what changes is the way you solve the problem with AI. The problem itself doesn't change.
I love that.
So, and I think this is advice I give to people who are starting their career. Don't figure out what you will do, figure out what problems you want to solve. And as AI evolves and the world changes over decades, you may shift the way that you actually solve that problem, but the problem, the one that you're passionate about, the one that gets you excited to be tackling every day, stays the same. And that gives you this expansiveness to think about the world in a much more applicable and pragmatic way when everything is changing. So focus on the problems, not the technology. Focus on the problems the technology will solve.
I love that sort of flip of the script, because you're right. As soon as a new technology comes out, a lot of leaders panic. How am I going to use this? How am I going to apply it? Instead of starting with what they know. And that really resonated with me yesterday, speaking about resonant communications when we were chatting. And I know another thing that ties into the work we do at the Nova Method with marketing, branding, communications, it's maintaining your brand authenticity while trying to learn this new technology. But the problem of brand authenticity and resonance is always there, right? That's always the challenge. So we're trying to remind our clients to start there. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about that in your highlight reel is you show a video of you talking, and it's so very clearly not you, because you say it's an avatar. And then after that, you say, is anyone else scared? Because I am. I never said that. So how do brands and leaders maintain authenticity to tackle the problems with AI when AI is very often inauthentic?
Well, again, I would distinguish the difference between authentic and real and accurate and correct. And what you need to figure out, especially as a brand marketer these days, is your message correct? Is it accurate? And that only happens if you make sure that your message is consistent in all your channels. That AI, when it's looking at you from all, because it's going to interpret what it sees. It's not going to make things up. It's going to interpret what it sees. And if the way that you express it and the way that your customers and your network is expressing your brand is inconsistent, then AI is going to show that too as well. So AI is a wonderful reflection back to you on how your brand is actually being perceived. And my belief is that when you can use that brand in a warm, authentic, real way with real people behind it, they may be using AI, but it comes from a place of authenticity, of driven from people who understand what it means to, and your messaging and your positioning and all the things that go into your culture that adds up to your brand. All of those things are people driven, not technology driven. And it comes across, AI will totally see that. And if it's missing, it will also see that too.
I haven't heard that before, that it's a reflection, but it's so true. And, we had a conversation this week with a brand that's in the e-commerce space, and they wanted to know why they had to do all of these other things for brand awareness, authenticity, and communications in order to show up at the top of visibility and surfaceability. And so I like that you're talking about consistency and a mirror, and authenticity ties to trust. And I know you talk a lot about trust as the new currency, and that AI has made it more important than ever. Do you think that organizations that win with AI will be the ones not with the most technology or even handle on AI, but with the most trust? Or how do those two things work together?
Well, I think, again, with AI, volume now is infinite. You can create infinite amounts of content that is consistent with your brand. And because volume is infinite and readily available, it's a commodity and therefore worthless. So what is actually scarce? It's trust and it's attention. And where we try to put our attention is with trusted sources. And so this is about building relationships now, and trusted relationships who will recommend you, talk about how great you are, and people who know them will trust them. So this is about building a network of trusted people who can recommend you. And then through that recommendation, that's how people will learn about you. And so it's kind of a wacky, because it's always has been the way you influence people was just by volume, just frequency. And the frequency just doesn't work anymore. We all tune those out. It doesn't matter which channel it's in. We just tune all of it out. And the only thing we actually pay attention to is people who we trust.
I love that, because all of these years building up our network is paying off in a way that maybe we didn't imagine that it would. And it's always been important. It's one of the first lessons my father ever taught me, which is it's all about your network. And it's still true today, maybe more than even when I started my career. So thank you for that. When we were talking about, oh, go ahead.
And just one other thing, the way you build that trust is you earn it by being useful before you're actually needed.
Yes.
And so whenever I create content, I don't create content in order to get another follower. I create content so that I can be helpful. I give away content. I give away all my slides. Just very generous, because if you can use it, go and take it and use it. I don't worry about somebody copying it. I just ask that somebody give attribution. But if they put it in their own words, I'm like, at least it's getting out there and it's being useful for other people. But it always comes back. It comes back because I've done this effort to support people and help people with no expectation of return. And that builds trust. That builds your reputation. That builds your network. So be generous. Think about it as a world of abundance rather than scarcity. And that's how we have to operate in the world of AI. In the past, we always dealt from the world of scarcity. Now we have to have a different mindset of abundance. And how do you use that to build the trust and relationships that are going to be valuable?
I like that. And I do see a lot of people giving information and education away. And I do think that's a way to resonate with people, right? You helped me to learn something. So now I'm going to remember you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to share your name or your brand or whatever. So I love that abundance versus scarcity. No scarcity complex here.
Yeah, I'll give you a really core example. At the end of my presentations, I share my email address. And I say to people, I do this in every presentation and nobody writes me. I'm sincere. Please write to me. I would love to hear what's working, what's not working. That's how I learn and do my work. And every time, almost nobody emails me or contacts me on LinkedIn. And people are like, that's pretty ballsy. You're going to have hundreds of people contacting you. And I go, I guarantee you they won't, because people they don't believe me. And when I do, and they go, wow, she actually wrote back, that gets extended throughout their trust network that I will respond. I will do. And I'm absolutely sincere in doing this. And I'm building that trust network person by person. Even if they never reach out to me, the fact that I share my email out of a point of abundance rather than scarcity is an indicator that I can be trusted and that we're going to work on this, that we're in this all together.
That's very generous of you. And that's what you're saying to start with, is generosity. How does that tie into you talked about a scarcity play versus abundance play, excuse me. Why is we will use AI to cut costs and cut people such a short-sighted read in that regard? Because that's not an abundance play. And so many people are afraid of the scarcity from that perspective.
Right. And again, somebody said to me, I can 10x my employees so I can fire the other 9, right? I'm like, no, why don't you think about that's a point of view of saying everything's going to stay exactly the same as today. And so I'm just going to optimize for my status quo versus saying, what if I were to 10x 10 employees that I already have, who I trust, who I know, who are amazing people. And now I have 100x. What new things could I do? How could I grow? How can I understand my customers better? What are new services I can create that I could never have thought of before? So that's an abundance play versus a scarcity play. One is set in the future and growth and possibility. The other one says, I just have to optimize my status quo. And you know what happens to the status quo in the present day? It quickly becomes the past.
Right.
So I'm sitting here going, you may think you're being really smart by saying, I'm going to focus on efficiency, but you're shortchanging your future. So when I talked to a call center called Connecta, one of the largest call centers that does business process outsourcing, they looked at AI. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. We're going to use it to supplement how agents respond in real time. We're going to use it to increase the quality of the calls, decrease the training time, and we're going to have new capabilities that we can use to reinvent and identify new opportunities. And so they started launching businesses. And they began this in January 2023. And last year, they announced that they were going to grow their headcount by 5% over the next 2 years, not cut it. So they looked at this again, whereas other call centers are going like, hey, we can become more efficient and just cut people. And like, no, our problem isn't that we have too many people. Our problem is that we can't meet the needs of our customers fast enough. So they correctly, I believe, identified what the true underlying problem is and are growing the way with AI, not just cutting their way to profitability.
And isn't that the job of leaders, is to take calculated and intelligent risks in order to grow, not just to stay status quo? So that's a really
Right.
great example. I know you also mentioned an example about IKEA. Would you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, so this is even before AI came along. They were just using predictive AI, and they realized they didn't need 8,500 people in their call centers. And they go, but these are valuable employees. What could we do with them? And so they said we could start a design service. So they
Hmm.
trained them on how to do design and started the new service that now gives them it's a billion-dollar business for them.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think this is a real difficult. I'm not saying this is always translatable that you can reskill people into new jobs. I was speaking with a bank and they said we used to have 90 people reading checks. We only need 5 of them now. And of the 85 people that were made redundant because of technology, about half of them agreed to be reskilled or retrained into other jobs in the bank. And half of them like, I liked my job before. I'm going to look for something similar, or I'm just going to retire, because that was a job that they knew and liked and loved and wanted to do. So we're going to have this pain point going forward. And this has been true about business and technology for decades. And that technology comes along, it changes the way we do work. Some people transition with it, some people do not. And I think we need to prepare as organizations and as society and as communities for what that looks like. Because we all remember a time when factories were automated or shuttered and left entire communities decimated. And I fear we're going to be headed towards that. The early indications are that there are not widespread layoffs from AI. And it's partly because, fortunately, organizations are kind of slow at doing this. So I think we have some time. We don't have a lot of time, but my hope is that leaders will be very thoughtful and very human in thinking about the impact on workforces as we go through these changes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit about combining the humanity with the technological disruption and moving forward and risk taking? How do you coach your clients to combine those two things, keep those two truths at once moving forward? Do you have some advice for leaders there?
Sure. In the end, it's humans who use AI. And so we talk about AI augmenting humans. I like to also think about augmenting AI and filling in the gaps and places where AI can't do the work, at least today. And I also think that if the only thing we do with AI is just to be more productive, and as you become more productive, we fill that time with just more work, doing the same thing, right? Versus filling that time with the opportunity to focus on the things that truly make us unique and human. Things like developing our empathy, our ability to have self-reflection, our intuition, our judgment, our wisdom. These are things that are uniquely human. And the more we develop them, the more we're able to use AI to create more value and more time and capacity to not only do more work, but again, to become more human. Because I fully believe that the organizations that are going to be differentiated in the future are not the only ones who can use the technology, but use it to and use it in a way that they adapt the organization.
Right.
Not just but adapt the organization. And that is a very human, people-oriented skill. And so the more we can become more human and inject more of that into our organizations and the work and the products that we create, the more unique and differentiated we will be. Because when everyone has access to the same technology, the same data, the same knowledge, everything becomes a moderation, a medium. And to differentiate, you really have to have that human element, that spontaneity, that spark of curiosity and creativity that can only come from humans asking really unique questions that AI hasn't asked before.
Well, I think that's a nuance that I've seen, and I'd be interested in how you inspire leaders to inspire their workforces in how they use AI. Because what I'm seeing, I teach adjunct at Northeastern, for example, and I will say to my students, it's been a couple of years now, I know you're going to use AI, and I'm fine with that. It is up to you. If you want to ideate with it, use it for research, how you use it is up to you. I am not you in the future. You are you in the future. So if you're using it so much that you're not using your mind to create things and to learn, that will be a price you have to pay in the future, not me. So it's your choice. But a lot of folks, I think right now, are using LLMs, right? I just had this discussion with my business partner yesterday. I don't mind if our staff uses it to, again, ideate, research, fact check, those sorts of things. But I want the idea and the creativity to still come from a human mind, to start there versus the other way around. How, as leaders, can we help coach our workforces to do that and to not just get, for lack of a better word, sort of lazy and rely on it too much? Do you guide leaders in your consulting with that?
Yes. I start by having the leaders use AI themselves and demonstrate how to use it well. And here's a task that I give them. I go, next time you go to the meeting,
Yes.
use
It's
AI
something.
to prepare for it. So
Yes.
use AI to prepare for it. And at the beginning of the meeting, ask people, how did you use AI to prepare for this meeting? Let me show you how I did it. And so you're showing and demonstrating from your own behavior, what does good look like? So it's one thing to say, use AI, use critical thinking. Have they seen you doing the same?
Yes.
And a lot of leaders go like, but I don't feel no, I don't feel confident. I'm like, it has to start with you.
You know, it's like parenting. I love this. These are the same reason I loved your highlight reel because, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, so much of what you teach, train, and talk about is fundamental, sensible human traits like do as I say, not as I do, or, like I'm a parent, I have to be a good example. So I love that because they're grounded in humanity. And it really makes your whole thesis of how to apply the technology using what you already know very concrete and understandable. So I love that example.
Yeah, Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner wrote this seminal book on leadership called The Leadership Challenge. And one of the things they talk about as a characteristic of leadership is you have to model the way. And that has never been as true with AI. You have to show people through your own actions, this is how to use AI. And one of the challenges as a leader is you're used to having all the answers. When it comes to AI, you'll never have all the answers. You're just
Right.
going to have a lot of really good questions. And that's how you demonstrate how to use it.
And isn't
If
one of
you
the answers demonstrating how to use it to how to adopt and pivot when new disruptive technologies come along and sort of how to,
exactly.
right. Okay. Sorry. I
Yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you, but
I think one of the best things about AI is you begin to really understand how to use it, and you know you're becoming fluent when you can use AI to tell you how to use AI. It's kind of a meta thing, right?
it's very meta. Yes.
But it's kind of like you go, duh, of course.
Right.
And I believe that to get the best out of AI, you have to ask really great questions. And
Yes.
so if you want a great answer, you have to ask a great question. And that's what separates somebody who's really good at using AI. And it's a reason why experts are so much better at using AI because they just know what questions to ask. If
Right.
I were to go ask AI to make me an image, I'd be like, I'm making a fuzzy dog against like some sort of mountain background or something. And a photographer would be like, use this aperture, use this kind of focus lens. I'm like, they can make a much better picture than me.
Right.
It's because
Right.
they're an expert in what goes into a good picture.
That's a really good point. Back
And
to
so
what,
what and again, what you're asking people to do is to develop expertise. You're asking your students what you're developing here isn't a shortcut to getting work done. You will pay off in the future when you are an expert at
mm,
able to use AI to get work done. But it's not just doing it at the minimum level. It's about how do you bring your unique perspective, your unique ideas, and how do you use AI to train it?
right.
I use AI constantly for research and for brainstorming, and I use it as a foil to say, like, what am I missing in my arguments here? Take it on the personas of all the different people I'm talking to in my audience.
Right.
And challenge me about more details about how do I serve all of these personas in a single audience with a post, an article, a newsletter, a speech, because you have to do so much with
Right.
so like limited time and attention that you have. So how do I be as sharp and as clear as possible? And then I'm asking a questions, piecing things together from my experiences and saying, how do these three things work together? And they go, let me provide some ideas. I'm like, oh, pick this one. Let's go deeper onto that one. So I'm co-thinking with the AI. And what's great is when I train it on my data and my knowledge base, it's like talking to myself and a smarter, more knowledgeable version of myself that's challenging me. And that is thrilling because I don't get the opportunity to do that very often.
That's also very meta. But do you know what I love about what you just said is you used the word challenging a couple of times. And I think that's probably what leaders especially need to get comfortable with is AI defaults to sort of supporting you, right? And not challenging you. So I think, do you think a lot of people are missing that piece in their prompts and their questions and their use of development tools in AI that you need to make it challenging. You need to make it ask contrarian questions or give contrarian views and really work through all the aspects of a problem that you're facing.
Yes. In the same way, you can surround yourself with sycophants, people who tell
Right.
you you're right all the time. It's the same challenge. You can surround yourself with AI that just likes you and thinks, oh, you're so wonderful. You're so smart and so intelligent and articulate. That's a great way of saying that versus saying, okay, fine, great, thanks. And how could I do this better?
Right. I'll
And do
always say, are
you,
you appeasing me right now, Claude? Are you
yeah,
appeasing me?
and just say, hey, thanks for the kudos, but tell me what I don't know.
Right.
And the leaders who surround themselves are confident enough and secure enough to surround themselves with people who will challenge them are the
Mm,
ones who are always going to do better. And it takes a very secure, mature leader to do that, where people will again hold up that mirror to you and just say, look at what you're doing, what you're saying. It's not consistent. It's not in line with our values, or our strategy is saying this and you're going off in this direction. And why do you keep doing all these wild experiments and going off course? Our strategy is here. And so it's a fantastic check on you. Your board does that automatically, but who does this day to day for you?
right.
Most do not have the luxury of that. And AI can be that thought partner, that sounding board, but only if you ask it to.
That's a
So
really good perspective.
yeah, a little thing that I do at the end of every one of my prompts is I go, here's what I wanted you to do. And before you start, ask me any clarifying questions you may have. And they built it into and it's learned that to always ask me questions just to get a better sense, and always ask me like 2 or 3 questions now. But I used to have to prompt that, and I still prompt that sometimes because not everything knows the way I work.
Right.
And so I'll say like, hey, just ask me any clarifying questions you have anywhere along the way. And it turns the prompt from being a question answer session to a conversation. And it's much richer. I don't have to worry about having everything in the prompt. I know that it's going to get more clarified as AI does its work.
Right.
And as it gives me responses, like, that's interesting. Let's go deeper here. Pick these 4 things and combine them and go deeper. Now take these 3 things and go deeper. Expand on this area. Cut this area. It's not relevant anymore. And so working together as if this is a colleague, a really smart, thoughtful colleague who can challenge me is the best thing ever. I mean, I worked with a co-author on this book.
Right.
She was a dear, dear friend, one of the world's first chief AI officers, and so knowledgeable. I would write something, she goes, Shar, that's completely wrong. So it's great that I could trust her to do that. And I
Right.
can trust AI because I've tuned it, I've trained it, I've worked with it in so many iterations that I can put it in there, and without even asking it, I'll be like, this isn't so good. Like,
Right.
this doesn't put up water. This is subpar. And it'll tell me that from the very beginning versus like, oh, this is so good. So
That's a great piece
yeah.
of advice. And not everyone has the luxury of working with you and being able to get that advice. So thank you for sharing it here and other places. You're always so generous. To that end, though, and to your point about good partners and using AI as a challenging partner. There's a lot of snake oil out there right now, a lot of consultants and experts appearing up overnight. Everyone's saying they can help you with AI visibility, or at least tell you whether or not you're visible in AI. I don't know if they actually can help them. And AI being used to build networks that may be a little bit less than sincere. Do you have advice for leaders on how to determine who to trust and who to work with when they do need advice if they're not able to work with someone like yourself?
Always ask them, how are you going to help me support my business strategy? Here are my top objectives, my 3 or 5 objectives. This is what I care about. How can you help me achieve those objectives? And
Okay.
and if they
Great.
just go back to slideware and repeating their feature points, they're not the person to work with. Do
Right.
they understand your problem? Will they do everything possible to better understand your problem and then to solve it for you? And if they can't do
Right.
that, go away, run away as fast as you can.
Okay.
Because what I find is that when people can hear and understand what your core problem is and can articulate that, that is half the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't even waste your time. And so the vendor calls that I recommend how people do vendor calls is, I don't want to see your slide deck, or I'm happy to see a slide deck, but they have to address one of these strategic problems for me. Otherwise, I don't care.
Right.
And the
Well,
vetting,
and a lot of those. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
and you can just save yourself a lot of time by saying, Your job is to interpret your services and offerings and your products to my problem. So I don't want to hear about a hypothetical problem. I want you to hear me addressing my problem. And if you need more information about my problems, happy to spend that time doing that. But I want to hear about your solution to my problem, not about a hypothetical one. I don't need to see features, just directly address my problem. And it just saves you a lot of time because either they can or they can't address that problem. And if they can, if they say they can, then give me proof, give me examples, show me a demo. And I love to do show and tell because it's one thing to see something on slides and show me that you can solve this problem. With AI now, you should be able to show me a product and a solution within a few days, if not a few hours.
Right.
So show me, build it.
Show me.
Show me what you build. Show me. Don't just
And
tell me.
Goes back to what you said at the beginning of knowing your expertise, right? If this person is an expert, they will know how to do what you're saying. And I think that we're seeing an increase from that perspective, really cold messages, very AI driven messages. They're not even, to me, they seem very, again, for lack of a better word, lazy with just sending out even more so a larger amount of cold messages now. And you talk about how that is no longer resonant. It's not working. And you talked about trusted networks. You talk about referrals and our networks coming back to being so important now. So is there something now with AI in consideration that replaces a cold message now? Or do you think those are going to get better in terms of people using AI to just pump out hundreds of cold call messages?
Well, you can tell what the cold call messages look like because they just read your LinkedIn page and regurgitated parts of it for you. But I did this exercise to market my book. I went and got all from my LinkedIn, I downloaded all the people who had commented on my content or shared it over the past year. And it was 1,500 people. And I deduped them and I recognized if they had done it 50 times or one time. And for the people who had done it 50 times across all the different posts, summarized like the general trend, again, using AI to better understand what that engagement looks like. And then I had it craft very short messages to them. That was very personal, used my voice, and I reviewed every single one of them before they went out.
That's amazing.
Because I recognized them, didn't know them, could add little things, but I read every single one to understand who they were. And they had invested time to come to my website and engage with me. I owe them the courtesy to understand who they were and why they came. And that shows in the work that I do.
Right.
And it's a tremendous amount of time, but that's 1,500 people who got a personal outreach. Again, it amplified and made easier because I could never have done that by hand. Again, it took me a couple of days to actually go through everything, but it would take me weeks before. I would never have undertaken that without AI. So I think this is not about just doing what we've done in the past, but doing new things about how do we think very deeply about what that relationship looks like? What does it mean? And then use AI to amplify and deepen the relationships that we already have there. We have so many relationships and we do not treat them with the respect that we should be.
That is true. And when you deepen those relationships, everything you share, do, work on becomes more resonant, which is the theme of the podcast. So I could talk to you for 2 more hours. I didn't even maybe I got to most of my questions, but I know we're running out of time. So I love that example. That is fantastic. It shows the connection between the humanity and the technology. And I know that people can really benefit from following your work. Can you tell us just before we go about your new business and where people can find you and why they should reach out to you as a human?
Yes, sure. You can find all my information at charleneli.com. And I am launching a new business called quantum-networks.com. And the idea is that we are taking the foundations of the book and doing executive training because leaders need that hand-holding. Like, how do I do this? So we're doing the equivalent of a 1-day in-person or 2 half-day training sessions for them. And then also are giving AI leaders that foundation of how to create value with AI, how to connect AI to strategy, how to pull together an AI roadmap, how to think about execution deeply into the organization. And so we can certify that AI leader. And it's fantastic if you're bringing someone on to make sure they have all the fundamentals and all the tools available to them. And then a third offering around this is that we'll train people who can do this on a fractional or full-time basis. So if you're an organization that doesn't have anyone who can fill that role, going out and hiring that person on your own without any guidance is really hard to do and also very time-consuming. And so we can offer to place these people who come in, and more than consultants, they were actually embedded in your team as a fractional full-time person to orchestrate your AI. And again, it's not to replace people, but it's to make sure that everyone has the same roadmap, is singing from the same strategy and going at the same speed. So it's again, we think there's a real need in the marketplace for that kind of skills and training, and also a community of AI leaders, because it's pretty lonely out there. So I've been working with a group called Samudra to bring AI leaders together on a monthly basis and continuously basis online to support each other in a confidential way.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And we'll share all of your information in the show notes, and maybe even do a little bit of an additional blog with some of the questions that we didn't get to, since we've taken up all of our time. But thank you for your generosity in time, spirit, and education, and such a great conversation. I appreciate you being here.
No, thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thank you.